Alright, let's take a look at creating a shaft and groove. Tonight, basically, what we're going to do is take a look at how we can actually construct a couple of new features. Still a sketch-based feature in CATIA, just a little bit different application of using that sketch profile. So to start out, what I'm going to do is, of course, grab a sketch, start with the reference plane, and in this case, what I want to do is kind of look at the profile I can construct here. Things to realize when we are dealing with a shaft type feature, we want to take advantage of a symmetrical axis that runs lengthwise through the part. So in this case, what I would do is probably come in, starting out maybe at an origin point with the profile tool, working my way out from that center and just kind of getting that general shape in there. In this case, what I want to do, if I take a look at the part, you'll notice that it does have a spherical radius on the end of it. All that really means is that when they're actually going through and creating that geometry, they're placing a radius on the end of that. So probably the easiest way to do it would be to switch over to this tool, 3-point arc, just come in, kind of generate that guy out. And at that point, I would probably hit the select tool to dump out of that profile. I'm just going to finish it up by extending the line segment over here to the right. So making sure that I'm getting that 0, 0 point, coming over, placing. At this point, what I would want to do is probably remove the unwanted portions of geometry here. And to do that, what I'm going to look for is one of the tools that are available to us. So I can actually come through and take a look at this guy, which is trim, but the one I'm really interested in is if I actually hit the drop down arrow here, I'm looking for this guy, and that's quick trim. If I grab quick trim, what it allows me to do is remove unwanted portions of geometry up to an intersection point. And as you can see, that made it pretty easy to remove some of that stuff. So what I want to do now is just come through and kind of establish some of those dimensional values. So I'm just going to come through standard technique to do that, placing that 550 overall. So probably something I need to do is ensure that I am working with the correct units. So again, we'll come up options, come in here, kind of look at parameters and measure units. Looks like I need to change that over to inches, hit OK. That, of course, is going to update an inch. At that point, I can come through, add my dimensional constraints that I'm after. So in this case, this guy happens to be 550. I know that my overall happens to be 3125. So in this case, I would want to come in, maybe do a divide in that dialog window. So maybe 3.125 divided by 2. And kind of continue along that path to get that shape in there. So again, just basically placing some dimensional values, making sure I'm consistent with what's on the print, and just kind of getting that guy into shape. So same process here, 1.875 divided by 2. And then I would probably come in and maybe modify this. Notice that there is a center point to that arc kind of floating out in space. Probably want to actually attach that, the coincident relation. Notice that that did actually lock that guy down. The reason being we have a couple of constraints in here that are kind of making sure that things are locked in position. We do probably want to make sure that we have the correct radius involved with this guy. So we end up basically getting a fully defined sketch, and at that point, of course, we're just exiting that workbench, entering back into our part mode where we can actually come through and create a shaft. Now, shaft is going to work very similarly to what we've seen or expected within the pad functionality. What you're going to find here is that, of course, it does have a limit section, a selection. The thing that we need to pay attention to is what we're actually using for our axes, though. So in this case, it's going to be pretty straightforward. I'm just going to come through, select that line segment, and of course, it's going to revolve that particular geometry set around for me. So it creates that 360 degrees of that particular part model. So it's pretty easy to get a cylindrical shape via that type of feature creation. The next thing we want to take a look at would actually be groove, which is kind of the negative feature. It's actually going to cut and 360 degrees for us. One thing that's advantageous would maybe be to come up here into our part feature tree and actually take a look at what's been developed and maybe take advantage of a right click and select Hide Show. That'll actually expose existing geometry that's going to be beneficial when we actually come back in with another sketch. Because if I actually take a look at how this is developed over here on the left, you'll notice that some of the dimensional values are coming in from our previously existing sketch. So what I can do is come in, kind of create a similar geometry set to the one that I did before, and just kind of touch this guy up. We just need to come in. I can take advantage of that pre-existing sketch, sketch 1 there, and actually set some things parallel to one another. That, of course, is always going to make sure that they're aligned with one another at a given distance. I'll jump in, select a dimension, throw that guy on there. It's going to happen to be an aligned dimension. It happens to be 0.625 down. You do the same thing from the top here. And of course, let's just throw one on here, making sure that it penetrates all the way through. Finish the sketch. At that point, I can come up right-hand side, select Groove. Exact same process again. Select my axis of revolution, hit OK. It's going to pocket that geometry out. So just some things that might be beneficial to be able to play around with, and definitely to increase our efficiency.